Everybody hates time tracking. I hate time tracking. And if you say you love time tracking, you are certainly in the minority if you aren't telling a little bit of a fib yourself. And the thing is that time tracking and time entry and doing all of those related tasks is one of the best ways to diagnose how effective your MSP is running. So it's important even if everybody hates it. My name's Adam Hanneman. Welcome to Ramblings of a Geek. I've been in the MSP space for a better part of a couple decades, and I have spent plenty of my time entering time in various systems in my career. So let's talk about why time tracking is important. I'll also cover a couple different tips and tricks to make it slightly less irritating for your team as well. Let's go ahead and get started. I talk to MSPs all the time, and often I'll run into an MSP that says, well, we're pretty profitable and we don't track time. And I say, good for you. The reality is that when you don't track time and you run into an issue where there's profitability issues or gross margin issues or something like that, it's really, really hard to figure out where the problems are. So that's why time tracking is important, if annoying. That's the lens in which I'm viewing our conversation today, because I'll make sure that you're ready to be able to diagnose when there's issues, when there's things that you want to solve in your business, and time tracking and the associated metrics that go along with it are really important. Now, often people don't track time because they are so busy and things are just moving so chaotically and all of those things. And they fall victim to what we call the tyranny of the urgent. Because when you fall victim to the tyranny of the urgent, whatever lands on top is usually what gets worked, which prevents your team from addressing the real important issues sometimes. It prevents you as an owner or a leader within your organization from spending time on really important stuff like strategy. You're always just fighting the next fire. And if you always have your fireman hat on, you aren't going to be able to really appreciably move the needle for your business forward. So that's why this is important. And that's why I want you to think about seeing beyond the tyranny of the urgent and why this time tracking thing might be really important. Because if your techs are just surviving and the owner is just surviving and the service manager is just surviving, trying to get all the things done, but it's really just kind of this jumble of like noise, I think this is a situation where many MSPs run into this, whether you're real small or a little bit larger. I actually think back to my most recent MSP that I worked in. We were pretty good size. We had time entry issues here and there and had to re-establish goals and some of those things along the way. I mean, this isn't a small MSP issue only. It's certainly more prevalent in especially owner-operator MSPs or owner plus a tech or two, because you're still just kind of doing all of the things and it's hard to get all that stuff in. But when you shift into doing this the right way, you get better visibility into things. And visibility is really, really important, because when you enter your time and you get visibility into what's going on, you can identify noisy clients, you can identify noisy pieces of hardware and equipment, you can identify areas in which you can improve your business, and you can lean into those kinds of conversations. And one of the things that comes to mind is that whenever you talk to techs or a service manager or somebody about like how they're doing and how busy they are, usually you're going to hear the words or something like it feels really busy. We're always got something going on. Maybe it's time to hire another tech. Now, that might be the appropriate answer, and oftentimes it is, but it's not always. And without understanding what's happening on a day-to-day basis and having visibility in it, it's really tough to make those decisions. So if you've got any kind of dashboards that tracks time per day, time per client, those kinds of things where you're tracking the daily time, right? So if I think back to when I was a service manager, one of the things that was important to me was that all of my team had their time entered in. And so we had these rotating dashboards, and on the dashboards, it was just a bar chart that would climb throughout the day. And what it was each individual tech was a column, and the bar chart just climbed as you entered hours. And so if you got to noon and your bar chart was this little sliver or non-existent, you knew that you were behind. And in making that visible was a really easy way to make it obvious to people that they needed to put some time in the system. And it didn't take much. Like, if I was walking the floor, kind of working my way through it, every once in a while, I would just pause and look at the dashboards. And if that time entry thing was up on the dashboard and someone's bar was low and they noticed me standing there, guess what? Their bar wasn't low much longer, because they would go, oh yeah, I probably need to do this. Because The key here is just make sure that's visible, that everybody sees what's going on, and that's from like a daily visibility thing. But when you have this visibility into what's going on, you can do all kinds of metrics. You can understand the busy endpoints, you can understand the busy clients, you can dig into like deeper issues around things, right? Because if you're not entering time, you might not be entering tickets at all, right? So let's say a client calls up about thing A and you never write down thing A, you just fix it, because techs just want to fix problems. You fix thing A, and then the client calls about, so a different person, the client calls about thing A later, and you're just constantly doing that. Well, without visibility into what's going on, it's pretty tough to like say, hey, thing A is a problem, right? And that's where this visibility comes in, is you get an opportunity to do those kind of things and like lean into solving the bigger issue versus just symptom chasing. And if you're just symptom chasing, it's really hard to be any kind of proactive within your business. So that's a really important thing to think about as we think about time entry and making things visible and all of those things. That's kind of what we're getting at today. Not only do I do these videos about once a week, I do a newsletter about once a month as well. The newsletter is really just an opportunity for me to tell you more about what I'm seeing in the industry and give you an opportunity to kind of see some of my other content that's coming up as well as other content and things that I think you might enjoy. So please join my newsletter. I'm gonna drop the link on the screen and in the description of the video below. Because when you are able to make all of this stuff visible, you can make better decisions on your own headcount, on things to go digging into, on actual priorities. You can like take that data and make real business decisions. If you hear me talk about things like gross margin and those kind of things, I have to always talk about using the data to make better business decisions. This is one of those opportunities. If you have better data around what's going on in your business, in your service desk, in your account management process, all of those things, and ultimately client profitability, then you have a much stronger data point to make better business decisions. And that's kind of why we're all here anyway. One of the things I hear a lot as I talk to techs, as I talk to service managers and sometimes owners, is that this time tracking and documentation is this extra work they have to do. And I want to flip that thought around for a minute, because it's not extra work to do. It's literally part of what your clients are paying for. Your clients are paying for you to fix the issue and write down what you did to fix the issue, so that way the next person has to come and deal with it knows what's going on. And updating documentation, all those things are all part of it. If you don't treat that as just part of the work, then yeah, this time entry, documentation, all of those things could easily fall behind. And I don't want you to think that. I want you to think about making sure that time entry, documentation, and doing the paperwork part of the job, as annoying as it is part of what your clients want you to do and what they're paying you to do, with actual money, with actual desire for you to do those things. Because ultimately it creates a better client experience once you have built out your maturity level in your MSP a little bit more. And that's why time entry is just part of the job of servicing your clients. It's not some extra thing. If you are getting some value out of this video, and yes, I know we're talking about time entry and nobody likes it, but still, hopefully you're getting some value out of it, please do me a favor, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, do all the YouTube things. Apparently watching videos to the end is a thing now. Like, it's my job to make sure that you enjoy this video enough to watch it to the end, but if you wouldn't mind watching to the end, that wouldn't hurt my feelings at all either. And drop a comment if you have any tips or tricks or thoughts around time entry, where we can have a conversation about it. And sometimes people wonder, like, how much should they track, right? I think it's important that you track a number of things, but ultimately, this is the thing you can iterate on over time, right? So obviously you want to track the client, the start time, the end time, total hours, that kind of stuff. That's just kind of like table stakes, right? I also want you to think a little bit about making sure that you're tagging whatever endpoint or issue or service that you're working on in the ticket, if that's a thing that your PSA can do for you, because being able to gather that data is really important. I think tracking time by using some version of type, subtype, and item, or whatever your PSA uses, that's a ConnectWise term, but like most of the ticketing systems can like separate these things into a couple different categories and subcategories. Doing that allows you to make better decisions on like where the noise is in your organization or with some clients. Paying attention to what's in versus out of scope is also really important. Those things are important. Now, you could nuance all the different things and you could say you need to do this and that and the other thing. The reality is that I want you to start with like good enough, take a look at the data, figure out what is working, what's not working, and what could go better, and then lean into whatever the next thing is. That's how I would like you to approach this, especially when you think about just trying to like build out the habit. Now, when we think about building out the habit and trying to track the good stuff, I also want you to think a little bit about utilization for your team. And utilization is one of those things where if I talk about finance in any which way, shape, or form, especially if I'm talking about kind of moving gross margin in the right direction, I talk about utilization a fair amount, because utilization tells you how busy your techs are. And trying to understand what that looks like and have good utilization goals is really important. Now, I'm going to tell the very condensed version of it here, mostly because this is not a utilization conversation necessarily. But I think in a general sense, you want to be about 75% utilized across your team for the year. The reality is, though, that 75% utilized on a daily basis doesn't account for things like PTO, sick time, holidays, all of those other things that take you away from work. So you really want to aim at 80-ish percent, 85% utilized on a daily basis for your techs. But when it comes to your techs, you need to give them that number in a unit that they care about. 80% utilized doesn't mean a whole lot to techs, even though they can do the math. Oftentimes they don't. And so what I encourage you to do is tell your techs that they need to bill at least 6 or 6.5 hours a day. I'd probably lean on 6.5 or 6.25 or something like that. But 6.5 hours a day is an achievable goal. It is a reasonable and obvious goal, because they know if they build 6.5 hours a day. Now, if there is literally not 6.5 hours a day of work to do, then that's a different issue. But also, if there's not 6.5 hours of work to do in a day, you don't need to hire some new person. They're not that busy. So those are the conversations I want you to think about when it comes to utilization. Because if you get this time entry stuff figured out and you get the utilization stuff figured out and you're paying attention to kind of how utilized your team is, that gets you a whole lot more closer to, should I hire somebody or should I not hire somebody because we're too busy, right? That if your utilization is high and there's still plenty of work left to be done and you've got good gross margin, that's a pretty clear indicator that you can hire somebody. Now, if your utilization is high and there's still plenty of work to be done and your gross margin is garbage, there's probably some other things to go digging into. Now, you might still need to hire somebody depending on what's going on, but it's more likely that your techs maybe aren't super efficient, maybe you're not leaning to automation a ton or AI or whatever, or you got some noisy clients. If you've got some noisy clients who aren't stack compliant and don't have good documentation and some of those things, I would strongly recommend that you lean into that to like solve some of these issues, right? This is kind of back to that, stop symptom chasing and start problem solving, right? If you can solve the problems your clients are having that generate all these extra tickets and all this extra work, then you're going to be in a much better spot. So that's kind of what we're talking about when we think about all this time tracking stuff and making it visible and everything like that. So early on in this video, I promised some tips and tricks. Tip number one, especially if you've got project engineers, don't overload those projects with a bunch of 15-minute tickets. Those tickets suck. If you are going to schedule time for a project engineer, thing one, schedule them in at least half-day increments if possible. Scheduling a bunch of 15-minute tickets, like I said, sucks, but also it's not super efficient. And thing number two is, as you're building a project plan, if you have a bunch of 15-minute tasks that are semi-related, maybe make them as like checkpoints in a larger task, so that way you're not having to like close every single stupid ticket, because that's annoying. I've been a project engineer with a project plan that had 75 tickets for like 20 hours of work, and I was like, this sucks. There's way too much paperwork to go along with all of the actual work that goes along with it. The second tip and trick for your techs is to establish that they need to spend time entering time every single day. And that part is part of their job and part of the work that they're doing for their clients, meaning that just wrapping up this ticket isn't time for me to take another ticket while you're doing one thing, right? Just finish this thing first, get it all the way done, and then move on to the next thing. That's the thing that I've seen happen the most frequent. There's plenty of folks who are a little ADD in our world, and that jumping to the next thing is kind of that next dopamine hit. You gotta close the loop on the previous ticket, get it done, move it on. From a service manager perspective, making the time entry visible for the whole team and for yourself to understand kind of where you are throughout the day, because the last thing you want to do is get to the end of the day and find out that, or frankly get to the end of the week and find out that somebody hasn't logged half of their time or a third of their time or a quarter of their time, because trying to remember what you did on Monday on a Friday afternoon is pretty tough to do. In fact, it might be impossible. Like, I'm not sure if you all can remember what you had for lunch yesterday. So what you did on Monday is not a thing. So like, make sure that there's visibility and check-ins along the way. In fact, I strongly recommend service managers or owners, especially if you have a real small team, are doing a daily timesheet check. It sucks, not the most fun thing to do, but it helps everybody, because once you build the habit and once you teach the team what this looks like and they understand why it's important and they care why it's important, all of this gets simpler, all of this gets easier, and this isn't an uphill battle every single time you turn around. So getting this figured out and building this into the habits of your team, building it into the habits of your managers, building it in the habits of like your dispatchers and those kinds of folks, where like other people can keep an eye on things, is good for you. It's good for your team. It's good for your clients. Master this time tracking, do this well, and things will get better for your team. You'll have more data to make better decisions and all of those things. Now, also, and I'm just going to throw this little nugget in here, is that if you have account managers, they should be tracking their time as well. Maybe in opportunities and activities or whatever your PSA calls it, but they should be tracking time as well, because the time they spend on their clients is also time that should be tracked against their agreements, right? That's a really important thing. So master this time tracking, pay attention to some efficiencies, and things will improve in your business, and you'll be able to find the problems instead of chasing the symptoms. So with that, I'm going to drop my overall operations videos up over here. I'm going to drop my account management videos up over here. And I want to thank you for coming on this ramble with me, and I hope to see you on the next one.